while you obnoxiously hear me type. Well, I don't understand why Google decides to tell me to re-enter my password now. Oh, I sent them the wrong invite time. Let's see. Is Gynvael ready? Maybe. Hold on. Let me message him again. Ready when you are. I sent it a bit too late. So I know that usually we do really recon and bug bounty focused interviews, but I've realized like Ctfs and bug bounties are very, very close. And I feel like there's value in understanding. I don't know if Gynvael does bug bounties at all, to be honest. I'm not sure. But I think that the skills and the knowledge in between the two are very, very related. So understanding how people go after Ctfs and bringing them to bug bounty is very important, right? So let's welcome our guest. Can we get the chat hyped up before I bring him on? And remember, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I'm going to try and get to them as fast as I can. If you're watching this on YouTube, this goes live every Sunday at noon Pacific time. But I feel like my chat is pretty dead right now. So we're going to switch over. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, man. How you doing? Dude, I'm loving this background. I see a lot of books. Well, for people that don't know this, Gynvael, I hope I'm saying your name right, have never met. This is the first time I've actually had a live interaction, unfortunately. Other than stuff that I've read about you online and what my guests have told me about you, that's all I know. Give us a background. Who are you? What do you do? And how long have you been in the community?
145. That's amazing. Anyway, so my name is Gynvael. It's actually with a yeah instead of G, so it's Gynvael Coldwind.
See, I'm so glad that I got you to correct me, Gynvael. Got it.
No worries. Half of the world says Gynvael anyway, so I'm used to it. Okay, background. So I've been in security for about 15 years, in the professional security, that is. Then I've been first working at an antivirus company doing reverse engineering of executable packers and creating static unpackers, which are a little bit more harder than dynamic unpackers. Then I moved to a company called Infosec, which I created VirusTotal, which I guess some of the folks might know.
Yeah.
And I was doing basically everything from programming, like mobile programming, drivers, through pen testing, malware analysis, vulnerability research, like you name it. And also, I don't know, furniture assembly out of all things. And then a bit over 10 years ago, I moved to Google to the security team, and I've later on become a manager there in an internal vulnerability research team. Wow. So that's on the professional side. On the stuff I do after work side, I created a small CTF team called Dragon Sector together with Yuru. And then I was a captain for some time, and then I moved to be just a player, basically. I've also made a Zine called Paged Out. Only 2 issues came out so far. It's on pagedout.institute. If anyone wants to check, it's free. It's basically made from community for community. And the idea there is that every article is just 1 page. So it's pretty fast to read. It's focused around programming, security, hacking, hardware, like stuff I like, actually.
Okay.
And I also do YouTube streaming. Well, yeah, for some time I did make YouTube videos, but that was a long time ago and they weren't too good. On top of that, you did mention bug bounty. You're wondering, I've heard whether I did any bug bounties in the past. So I did only a couple of ones as from this side, but I also have been with Google Vulnerability Reward Program, Google Bug Bounty, when it was created for a couple of years. So basically processing bug bounties from the other side. So I also know the process from that side.
Very cool. I'm curious to hear, what got you into hacking? Like you said, you've been doing this for 10, 15 years now. What was the initial push that got you into hacking? What made you curious about hacking and interested in hacking 15 years ago?
That's a good question. Actually, that was war game challenges or hack me challenges. I was like on IRC channels with a couple of friends, and somebody posted a link to a simple hack me and then to another one, which was called Login Matrix, I believe. And yeah, I started playing with that, and it was pretty fun, like logical puzzles. I already have been programming at that time for a lot of years, so I knew how to read the code and how programs worked. It was quite fun to analyze them, and that's basically what started it, like just war games.
And so you start with war games. What is your what do you prefer with hacking nowadays? Do you do like what would you focus on a particular thing, or is it just whatever I can get my hands on to break it, I want to do it pretty much?
It's a mix of things. It always has been a mix of things for me. So I might jump from like hardware security and firmware and looking into FPGAs and stuff on one day to web security and JavaScript on another day. But it's usually around vulnerability research, I would say, with, but yeah, like with actual, let's call it actual security, system security mixed within that.
Okay. Let's talk about CTFs first. I kind of want to pick your brain with CTFs and then move away into web, if you don't mind.
Sure.
How did you get into CTF? Like, how did you hear about CTFs? You know, you said you did those challenges, the war games and the hack me challenges. Is that what exposed you to CTFs?
Yes and no. So the war games I mentioned, they were around year 2000-ish. So that was 20 years ago almost. And at that time, there weren't too many CTFs, or at least I wasn't exposed to too many. There were like basically one a year, I would say, which I've heard about and I participated. I think I participated in the first one around 2003, then another one a year later, and so on. So not too much exposure until 2012, where when basically I found ctftime.org, which is this global ranking, basically. And since I really like rankings, I messaged my friends. I messaged Mateusz Jurczyk and Adam Iwaniuk, and I asked them, hey, are we creating a team to win this one? So that's basically how we got really involved with CTFs and like created Dragon Sector. Both playing the CTFs, especially at the beginning, then also making CTFs. And in a weird turn of events, I also started co-organizing CTFs with Google, because Google also creates their own yearly CTF.
Mm-hmm. So you how did you learn to get better at playing these CTFs? Like when you do a CTF, there's numerous like skill sets you need, right? There's different categories. I know that there are folks that are good at one particular category than others, but there's also people that are good at almost all of them because I've played so many CTFs. How did you, as someone who was just new to CTFs and you were just learning, how did you become better over time? Like what?
This is kind of a question I remember asking the captain of PPP when we created our team. So one thing to kind of understand here, because this is also a question which I get commonly from on my live streams from like new CTF players, right? So one thing to understand here is that when I started playing for real with Dragon Sector, well, I already had around, I don't know, 20-ish years of experience in programming and like around 7 in security. So it wasn't like starting from scratch. And at the end of the day, what worked for us is just playing Ctfs, right? So to get better at Ctfs, you play Ctfs. What I would usually add to that is reading a lot of write-ups, not like in detail, right? But in basically to understand that something exists and where to find it and what tools you usually use for that. For example, I had no knowledge about radio. I almost don't know anything about software-defined radio until now either. But there was this protocol SSTV, slow scan TV, which was pretty common on CTF. So thanks to the fact that I saw it in some write-up, just like skimming the write-up, I could go back to the write-up and find tools and methods to deal with it, which helped quite a lot, I guess. So that's a good tip, I think. Read a lot of write-ups. Even if you don't understand them, you still know where to find information about something later.
It becomes a reference point, right? Like you can reference to it later on and say, okay, I remember seeing this similar vulnerability type, similar challenge, whatever. I'm going to go look for that author if I remember who it was. If I remember the title, look for it, see how they did it. Is it the same? Is it similar? And kind of go on.
Yes, exactly.
You mentioned having a really big background in programming before you got into CTF.
Yes.
Into playing CTFs. Do you think that is a requirement, or is it a requirement for CTF players to be good at writing code? And do you think it's a requirement for CTF?
Yes. It's a strong requirement. Okay. If you want to be good in CTFs, you need to write a lot of code, because the moment you go above like challenges which were in the old scale 100, which means very easy, you have to write some code to solve them. And the harder the challenges are, the more code you write, just to either, well, first of all, the tools usually don't exist for CTF challenges. These are like, CTFs operate on O days, right? So like it's usually an O day in a custom-made application, but at the end of the day, it's an O day, and it's usually a weird vulnerability, which isn't super common. So there are no tools. You have to write your own tools, ad hoc tools, basically. And then the exploit itself commonly is like a couple of 100 lines of code as well. So you have to be pretty good at programming. And that's true also for the whole security, I would say. Like, it's fine to use tools as long as they are useful, but at some point the tools will not provide what you need. So you need to know programming to be able to create your own tools, at least. That's my take on it.
Yeah, even so one of this question I'm gonna dig into a little bit more, but one of the things I always ask is like, is programming a requirement for hacking? You know, in a lot of cases, I feel like with web, it is a requirement to understand the fundamentals of how a web application works, but you can get by not knowing deep knowledge of it. But with a CTF where you have to write a lot of code, it's a complete different story. What's your take with coding? So before I ask this, I know the tool thing I understand. Like, it's good to use tools as long as A, you understand how they work. You're not just running them to, find bugs and whatever that is. And then B, on top of what you said, like exactly like being able to write your own code, improve whatever tool you're using and make it better. But you said you do web. Do you think programming is a requirement for web hacking as well? If so, why? And if not, why not?
I would say yes. So, okay, so again, this is a little bit about on what level one operates, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need any tools to find a simple XSS or XSRF or like whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can just do it with a browser. The moment that all low-hanging fruits are gone, you start to dig a little bit deeper into it. And like, for example, let's even talk about XSS. A more complicated XSS requires a more complicated payload. And at the end of the day, a payload for an XSS would be a program. So if you would scratch off all exploitation and you would stop only after finding the vulnerability, just like bug bounties, right? They're like that, usually just find a vulnerability, you report it, and like catching, you get cash. So that's a different story a little bit. It's still, I would say, really useful to be able to write tools because, especially in bug bounties, my experience is that low-hanging fruits are gone. So what you need to do is you need to deep dive. And to deep dive, you usually need to create your own tools just to speed up the manual process you'll be doing, or to I'm kind of going to digress, but one of my approaches is to have in the background running something, a tool which is looking for vulnerabilities at the same time where I'm doing that manually. So, and to do that, well, you commonly need to write that tool.
What languages do you recommend for people? So people that are just getting into hacking, they understand the fundamentals of web hacking. They understand OWASP Top 10, for example. They have gone through all these different courses. They understand a little bit of web hacking, but they're ready to go to that next step. What languages would you recommend?
Well, websec JavaScript is obvious, right? Especially that nowadays Node.js is pretty awesome on the, let's say, desktop side. I'm not going to say server side, but on the desktop side for making small tools, there are quite a lot of libraries. And on top of that, I would say Python. Python is usually the hacker's Swiss knife of choice, because again, of both being a super easy language, it's pretty expressive. You can write code, high-level code pretty fast, and at the end of the day, it has also a lot of libraries which are really useful. And quite a lot of applications created for security folks are scriptable in Python, which is a nice added benefit. So these two languages for sure. If you'd go lower the stack, like if you want to play with low level, then that's a different story. Obviously, then you need C++, C, maybe some Rust, assembly. Yeah, it kind of depends on the domain.
Why is, just for folks that don't understand this, or they're new, they want to understand it in detail, why is JavaScript important to learn, especially for web hacking?
Yeah, so back in the days, a website was, and back in the days, I do mean 15 years ago, a website was basically HTML, right? Yeah. There was no CSS, it was HTML, and all the stuff was going on the background, on the server side. Nowadays, an application, it's a really web application. The application is with a capital A, bold letters, basically, which means there's a lot of JavaScript code, and there might be quite a lot of vulnerabilities in the client side itself. So knowing JavaScript allows you to better understand that, and also write like browser extensions or small tools to be able to interact with it and better dissect it, basically. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, with bug bounties in general, like one of the biggest things that we try to tell people with JavaScript is like, if you can read JavaScript, you can have a better understanding of the application. You may just discover stuff that you won't see in the UI in the first place. And I can't stress this enough. I personally am not the best at JavaScript, but going through JavaScript files has been one of the most lucrative things that I could have ever done when I first got into hacking. Did you go to school for any of this?
Yeah, I actually went to do computer science in a technical university in Poland, in Wrocław. It was Politechnika Wrocławska. I did computer science and mathematics, which is pretty weird because I don't usually deal with mathematics, but it was pretty fun and pretty useful at some point, or to some extent.
Did your degree help with any of the stuff that you do nowadays?
Not really. Okay. So basically, I deal mostly with security, right? And I think the most important things I learned on the university were related to either algorithms, which was super useful to learn. That's like the highlight of my years on the university. And also, let's call it like high-level mathematics, or rather in deep mathematics, including how to write programs to solve some stuff. This surprisingly is sometimes useful, especially like when dealing with crypto. Knowing your math and knowing your statistic is and like probability is pretty useful. But that being said, I had almost no security at the university at all, so that was something I did on my own.
What about certificates? Do you have any OSCP? I'm not going to say CEH because I don't want to... I want to get that smile out of there. But what about certificates? Do you have any certificates or anything you recommend for hackers or people that want to get into hacking to pursue?
No, I don't have any certificates. My take on it is that if anyone wants to do a certificate for themselves, absolutely do it. because it might be a good motivator to learn something new, and you will learn something new while making a certificate. For example, you may mention CEH, right? I'm pretty sure I would learn something if I would apply for a certificate as well, like start going through the process and looking through the materials. Even though I'm pretty sure I know 99% of the stuff, at the end of the day in hacking, the devil is in the details, and the details matter. So, and I'm pretty sure some details I would learn in the process.
Do you think, is there any certificates you personally recommend that you think you have heard people that have taken it? Okay.
No.
I don't blame you. The reason why I ask is, I don't want to say it's a division, but there is this. I personally don't have any certificates. You can learn half of these things on your own if you really wanted to learn. But it's one of those things where if you're new in the industry, it gets you past the HR, unfortunately. And hopefully at some point that changes with, I'm not saying that's every company, but with some companies, the HR folks don't look for anything but certificates. You see them looking for particular keywords like CEH, OSCP and that sort of thing. So I think especially if you're someone who learns more by being taught than being self-taught, it's a very good place to start. But I always like to get my guests' take on it. Is it a recommendation? Is it anything you recommend? I've had some folks like John Hammond, who came on here not too long ago, and he was like, "Oh, OSCP, OSS." I'm like, "Dude, you have almost all of these certs." And he's like, "Yeah, I enjoy learning about new things." So that's kind of why I want to ask everybody usually, like, "Okay, what is your take on it?"
Yeah, I would kind of reverse it as well, and say that if somebody is thinking about working for a specific company, then do check their certificate requirements. Because, for example, if somebody would want to work at a bank, the bank will probably want to see certificates. The same if you want to work at a pen testing company that works for a bank, then you probably want your certificates to be in place, right?
Yeah. What's your advice for people that want to get into web hacking?
Okay, first, understand what is ethical hacking and know your law to not get into trouble.
Okay.
That's the first and most important thing. The second would be actually start doing it. There are quite a lot of opportunities to learn, be it on various war games like 24/7 Ctf.com or be it bug bounties where you can experiment with a real thing. I think I would start with learning the vulnerability classes, which is the most common vulnerabilities. You did mention OWASP Top 10. I would add to that OWASP Top 10 from a few years ago when it was a little bit more like XSS, XSRF, and so on. I would start there. And all the other not top 10 vulnerability classes, because once you learn classified vulnerabilities which are common enough to actually acquire a name, then I would say you're on a good way to understand how everything works, how security works, and you can start looking for not classified vulnerabilities, the ones which aren't as fancy to have their own name or to be as common to have their own name. So learn the classes and the most important word here is actually do, acquire hands-on skill. Do not read about it, but apply the knowledge all the time. That's 70% of what a new person would be doing, I would say, is apply the knowledge.
How do you recommend them to get that hands-on experience out to the bug bounties? Because with bug bounties, it's one of those things where you don't know if there's a vulnerability there. I recommend going down that route so you can start to learn how to identify if there is a vuln there or not. But out to the bug bounties, how do you recommend for people to get that hands-on experience?
Okay, so bug bounties are pretty interesting because dealing with bug bounties requires a good understanding of security, as in, I would say, what is actually a vulnerability, what is just a bug, what is a severe vulnerability, how to assess the risk. The common mistake I saw people make with bug bounties is to say, hey, I found this really critical bug, you must fix it now and give me a lot of money. And it turned out it was self-XSS because somebody didn't understand that even though you have an XSS, there is no risk here. It's not really a vulnerability at all. So learn that thing, find a mentor or somebody to explain you that. How do people who are at the other side of bug bounties look at the reports? What do they look for? And so that's one thing for bug bounties. But to get back to the point of how to do that hands-on, well, bug bounties are nice for beginners because they can experiment with a real thing, but I wouldn't focus on it that much because I don't expect beginners to find a lot of vulnerabilities quickly. But you will find them down the road if you focus enough, obviously.
Yeah.
But sadly, the state of our industry, right? But there are different things to do at the same time. Like I did mention already, war games. Another thing which I commonly do is just like write my own small applications where, like, for example, I want to learn new XSS techniques. So I just write an application which has this vulnerability, and then I write an exploit for it. So I can control, I know the application because I just written it, and I can control the whole environment. So I'm pretty sure I can learn properly how does the vulnerability work. So do that, experiment a lot. That's another tip I would give.
Are there any resources you recommend? By resources, I mean books. You mentioned CTF sites, but any vulnerable sites. I know Google has Google Greer that I've personally used a few times. I know that XSS game you guys have explains the basics of XSS. I remember 5, 6, 7 years ago when that came out, I went through, I was like, oh, okay, like this kind of helps you understand things a little bit more, especially when you're still learning about XSS. Are there any other resources like that? Let's start with websites first, or vulnerable apps, and then move into books if you don't mind.
So not sure I can tell you a lot here. In all honesty, I usually rely on Googling. So for websites, I'm going to reiterate war games. And there is wechild.net. This is an aggregator for war games, and you can sort by web security there as well. So go there for a list of websites which has like challenges, web security challenges, which you can deal with and play with and learn from. That's from on that side. And moving to the books, I don't know if I can recommend too much or anything. My problem is that I learned this stuff a long time ago, which kind of translates to all the books are outdated. So I'm going to recommend the usual thing, which is Tangled Web by Michał Zalewski, by El Kamtav. El Kamtav is like a legend hacker in Poland, basically. He lives in the US and is a US citizen as well. And his book is amazing in explaining how client-side web security works. It is already a couple of years old, but that's one book I would recommend. And the other book, which I would love to recommend, is actually in Polish. It's called Bezpieczeństwo aplikacji webowych. It was written by a company, a set of security researchers in Poland, really good, top, like world-class security researchers specializing in web security. And they first issued it in Polish, so I hope it's going to be translated in English, because I totally recommend that one. But yeah, if you speak Polish, you can find it now. If you don't, well, I think you have to wait.
Someone's asking for low-level stuff for entry-level hacking. I think what you said was because of how long ago you have, read these. A lot of it might be a little outdated. What about new research? Where do you get your new research, new topics? How do you get your hands on them?
Twitter, surprisingly. The InfoSec community on Twitter is pretty large. And a lot of publications are, just thrown on Twitter by either the author or somebody who just liked it. So Twitter for InfoSec is an amazing resource for being up to date, I would say.
Sure.
On top of that, like basically somebody telling me that they read a paper. I sometimes look for specific topics on Google Scholar, which I'm not sure if anyone knows that one, because it's pretty, I would say, not known in comparison to the older brother of Google.com, but scholargoogle.com is a scientific paper search engine, and it also works for security.
Yeah. I think there is tremendous value in Twitter because you just get exposed to a different world in InfoSec, dude. Like, you follow 5, 6 people that are in the same community, you just open up a whole another community within that. If you're into web hacking, you follow some of the web hackers, you just get access to more and more and more people. And then once you start finding the right people, I think, that's one of the best things. I think Reddit has some decent subreddits, NetSec, Learn to Hack, NetSec Students. Chat, let me know if I'm missing anything. And the Hacker News, I think, would be a good one to go through. What about
Yeah, plus one on all of them. I do see that one person on chat mentions the Art of Software Security Assessment, which is like this thick book. Whether would I recommend it? Yeah, absolutely. It isn't like it isn't a simple book to read, but it has all the information you need for starting to assessing security of software. So I would recommend that one. It's a hard read though.
I see someone saying Twitter and Infosec drama. I mean, it's the Infosec. I think it's in any community you're gonna have the drama, but if you follow the right people, I feel like the people that actually are on Twitter for the research, then you're not gonna get exposed to a lot of that drama. But the drama comes in any community. I don't think it's just specific to us, fortunately. But how do you learn these new research? So let's say someone publishes something new, curiosity peaks, you want to learn it. What do you do?
So this would apply only to a small subset because at the end of the day, a day is really short. So I usually only skim through papers. And for ones which do pique my curiosity, hands-on implement it. Try to re-implement it, try to check if you can reach the same results. Usually you cannot because security isn't trivial, but you will learn something in the process. So hands-on, implement it.
So you would say implement the vulnerability on your own, or try to implement it on your own, and then see if you can replicate the issue by hacking it or whatever that is.
Yes, absolutely. So basically the paper would be, I don't know, about Spectre, right? Like try to implement a simple version of a Spectre exploit.
Okay, fair enough. You mentioned mentors earlier. That's something I want to go back to. Mentorship and collaboration are two things that I usually ask a lot about with my guests. Did you have any mentors when you first started?
Sadly, no. I started when I was super young. It was when I started, there was still this like Berlin Wall and not a lot of people, not a lot of computers, not a lot of people interested in computers. So no, I was on my own. I was self-taught. Though I would recommend getting a mentor if anyone can. I know that boosts the speed of learning a lot.
Was there anybody that maybe indirectly mentored you because of the content they put out, books, or someone that you looked up to at some point?
Usually the two people I mention here is, again, Michał Zalewski, El Kantaw, especially reading his book, Silence on the Wire. That's for security researchers, and it was mind-blowing for me. I was super happy to read that book, so I would recommend it. Okay. And Janna Rutkovska, which is another famous Polish security researcher. She did a lot of low-level work around what is below ring 0, basically like ring -1, ring -2. And she and her people basically in Invisible Things Lab did quite a lot of good research, which also inspired me.
Do you currently mentor anybody or help anybody get into InfoSec?
Yes. So without going into details.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to ask who you're mentoring. It's just I want to reiterate why it's so important to either find mentors or find people that are like-minded that want to achieve the same things as you do and kind of learning from each other, which kind of brings in collaboration and why collaboration is so important. What's your take on collaboration?
Collaboration is, I would say, what really increased my skill level. During my life, I had several partners basically who were on the same level. Well, usually there was just like random people on the internet. Well, not really random. They're my good friends now. But initially they were like random people on the internet who were on the chat, and they were on a similar skill level to me, and or reached that skill level at some point. And we basically both learned from each other, but also it was a little bit like, he learned this, so now I need to learn it to like catch up. So it was a catch-up game between us, a rivalry, a friendly rivalry, if you will. So that was absolutely amazing. And on top of that, also working with other people in larger groups. Currently, I would say in Dragon Sector, if we play Ctfs, it's absolutely amazing to learn from other players in our team to the tricks they know, the hacks they know, the ways to like some quirks, tips, and things they have are absolutely amazing. So I really like that. And it's also always motivating to collaborate with smart people, to work with smart people, seeing that, hey, they are working hard on an exploit, so I also should work hard on my exploit. This is pretty motivating, and I absolutely +1 being in a collaborative environment, be it a friendly rivalry or being just like a normal team.
Yeah, I don't know if Zayat is still watching the stream. He's usually in the chat. I have a very similar story. So I actually randomly reached out to Zayat. I've never met this guy. I don't even know who he was at the time. This is in 2014, 15. And exactly what you said, man. It was, okay, he just exploited this thing. Dude, how the hell did you do it? I want to know. I learned from him. And then same thing, like, hey, I just found this. Going back and forth, and then trying to keep up with each other. The rivalry is very, very healthy. Very, very good as long as it's healthy. As long as you're not getting jealous of your own friends or competing against them, but it's just a motivational thing where you're motivated to, okay, he's doing good, I want to do good, I want to keep up, and you keep that as a motivation versus anything with negative connotation. It's absolutely awesome to have, and I highly recommend people finding people that are in the same skill level set as well as the same mindset. Really, really helps. The two usually with hacking, I focus a lot about web, and I know you said you have done some bug bounties. I want to kind of go back to that a little bit before we wrap this up. If you were to, I know it's not easy to give it a guide on how to get into web hacking, but if somebody is new and wants to get into hacking, one of the most commonly asked questions I get is, what should I learn first?
Oh, that's a good one. I usually follow that one up with like, what does the person already know? Like, are they coming blank from like nothing? They just switch to IT and want to do web hacking, or are they, for example, like system administrators which want to switch into web hacking? Because these are a little bit different answers. When assuming if
Let's ask them the latter, because usually most of the people that come to me, it's like, hey, I'm a network admin, I'm a sysadmin, I've done this in tech. I want to say the vast majority have done some sort of work in technology, especially with IT. For somebody who wants to just get into purely web hacking, never been exposed to it, what is your recommendation?
Okay, that way, I would say go and write a web application and then start learning about vulnerability classes, which I already mentioned, and then try to apply them to the web application which you've written. Engineering an application gives you insight into what decisions the programmers need to make, and that actually is a really good source of bugs, like being, well, that requires a lot of experience, but if you can put yourselves in the shoes of a programmer and think what decisions they had to make, you can sometimes spot obvious mistakes which they could make. So that's why I would recommend to a new person to just write a web application like as large as possible for a given person, which isn't usually too large, and then try to hack it. Because that way you will learn both about the architecture of web applications, how to set them up, how to get the environment ready, how to debug it, and on the other hand, also what mistakes you made, how to exploit them.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, with the learning the aspects of it, the things that I know, I hate to ask this question, but vuln type is what people want to know. Where do I start? Like, there's all these different vuln types. There's OWASP opt-in, there's this, there's that. What bug do I start with? Do you think there is one that you need to start with to progress, or is it just whatever piques your interest?
Well, at the end of the day, you have to learn everything, right? So I don't think it really matters where you start. A classical way to start in client web security would be XSS, which is pretty hard. There are like some, I do sometimes web security trainings, and I know that there are like a couple of things about XSS which need to click before people really get it. And like just showing alert one isn't the full story about XSS. So the client side, if you really want to start at a specific point, why not XSS? And on the server side, it kind of depends. I would say back in the old days, I would say PHP, absolutely go with PHP because like local file inclusion, remote file inclusion, but the landscape changed, right? So currently, I don't know, maybe something Node Express related.
Okay. As far as tooling goes, are there any? So my recommendation is to stay away from tools when you're first starting, just so you can understand how it works. But for someone who has already done all these, are there any tools you recommend people to have in their tool set at least?
Mm, mm, Python interpreter and JavaScript maybe in the browser.
Okay.
I know it sounds weird, but in all honesty, when I'm doing like web security challenges or some other web security stuff, I'm using a browser and I'm using what I mentioned, usually Python or some JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
And that's almost always that, with an exception to Fiddler, which is a web security proxy. I know most people use Burp. I, for some reason, use Fiddler, which both are fine. It doesn't matter, or even Zap. But at the end of the day, I don't use it as much, I would say, for WebSec. So yeah, there aren't almost any other tool I usually use.
What about CTFs? Are there any tools that you? So I know that there are the CTFs that are at a higher level. You're looking for ODays, complete different story. But for these conferences, the CTFs that most folks are exposed to, are there any tools that you recommend? I know Python is probably going to be one of the heavily used ones, but any tools if you could recommend people to install if they want to get into a CTF.
This is kind of dependent on the category, right? I mean, for reverse engineering, you do need IDA or Ghidra or Binary Ninja, right? There is no getting away from that. And usually a hex editor is pretty useful. For forensics, you probably are going to need volatility. For crypto, for simple crypto, where simple crypto usually means old school crypto, you just need a website which solves it for you. And you probably want to find that website first before a CTF. For the more complicated stuff, I'm not really sure. I think we go back to the write your own tools philosophy here. So yeah, it really depends on the category, but yeah, I kind of +1 on what you said to use tools which you know how they work, because at the end of the day, if you don't know how a tool works, it's useless. So, and if you know how a tool works, absolutely use it. Otherwise, you probably are better on writing it on your own. This is something that, like, usually friends kind of laugh at me, but there is this SQL map thing, right, which is used for SQL exploitation, especially blind SQL exploitation. I used it a couple of times, but at the end of the day, I still had to modify it. So I think for the last 10 years, I always written blind SQL exploits from scratch, because I know exactly what's going on there, and I don't have to modify a third-party tool to do my bidding to bypass some web application firewalls or whatever. It's way easier with my own tools. So that's kind of why I'm always like leaning towards my own tools, which I'm not saying is a good approach. It's probably a waste of time, but it's easier.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like, these tools are built assuming that it fits all web applications, but that's not the case. Not every application reacts the same way. Not every SQL injection is the same way. Sometimes there's been times where I've seen SQL map don't even pick it up when I know there's a vulnerability there, but feed it to the tool, it doesn't pick it up. And if you're relying on tools, that's an opportunity missed. Especially with bug bounties, that's a bounties miss that you may have lost out on for a few $1,000s. So it is good to have the understanding of how to do these things and having the tools as a companion or a complement, whatever you want to call it, on the side. On the topic of CTFs, when you and I chatted last week, I think it was last week, I interviewed somebody who played the Google CTF. Anything you can share with us on your end? Were you involved in the CTF, can I ask, with that CTF that was shown? Did you play or help organize the CTF at all?
Okay, so you're mentioning Accelerate, right? Not really
Yes.
Google CTF. Okay, so just a clarification. Technically, it was Google CTF final event Accelerate.
Okay.
That being said, it was supposed to be just a bonus event to Google CTF finals. That being said, well, pandemic and everything canceled our offline finals, but we decided to just go with a bonus event anyway.
Okay.
So I was the project lead for that one, for the Accelerate, and there were quite a lot of amazing people behind it. I'm not going to list them all, but if you see the videos once we finally release the videos, there is a credit list. Please take a look. And I can talk a little bit about it if you like. I have both a demo and a map editor ready. I can do a quick walkthrough if you like.
I just want to address a comment. Someone's like, quotation marks, were you involved? I just can't assume everything all the time. I have to make sure it comes from the person that's getting interviewed versus me just saying whatever it's on there. But yes, absolutely. I would love to get as much info as I can. If there's a demo, that'll be even better. That'll be awesome. I would love to see it.
Okay, let's see if my desktop works.
Ooh, I like this background. Is this a background? Nice.
And you can download it on Paged-Out Institute.
Very cool.
We are actually, to each issue, we make a 4K background, basically, which you can just download for free.
That is really cool. That's really, I love the colors in that. Okay. Page Institute.
Paged-Out.institute. Okay, so what was it about? Let me maybe start with a web browser and making sure I have it running, which I do not. This one. Okay, it is running. Here we go. So this was basically what the players got. The idea was that this wasn't a CTF. This was a speed hacking event, which means CTF plus speedrunning plus game hacking. So what the players got was this. This is a JavaScript game. It's actually a single player game which has a server side, and the server side is mostly an anti-cheat. So let's maybe log in. You're probably going to guess the password. And the idea was that the players have to go through the map. The map was different for each match. And there are 7 challenges to solve. Some of the challenges involved digging into the game engine code because there were basically like logic bugs, which means reading a lot of JavaScript. Some challenges were just typical CTF challenges where one would just approach a terminal and the terminal was basically netcat, basically just connected to another application, which was, I don't know, had a buffer overflow or something, or was a reverse engineering challenge. And then there were some in-game logic bugs as well. On top of that, what already the person you interviewed before showed was the players could hack the game all they want. The anti-cheat worked in a way that the state of the game on the client had to match the state of the simulated game on the server. So that kind of limited what people could do. But in the qualification matches, people still came up with a speed hack, which was not supposed to be possible. And that was actually a mistake I made while refactoring the code, and JavaScript not having types really bit me. So they made a speed hack, which was pretty amazing to see. The players had quite a lot of amazing tooling as well. So maybe instead of showing you the game, I'm going to show you a little bit of this, which is the map editor. So first of all, players got a game a week before the competition. And it was just a beta version. There were some engine changes later on, and there was only a beta map of the game, basically, which was quite small. There were some portals which portaled you at different locations. There were these terminals, which, as I mentioned, were basically connected to various applications, just like Netcat.
Okay.
And there were these flag consoles, the thing with the orb here, which basically was the place where you entered the flag. So you had to find a flag somewhere, usually in the terminal, and then put it in the flag console. And after you got all 7 of them, you'd go to an exit. And the players got to play with it. For example, there was this annoying pixel jumpy thing, so they could prepare the tooling for that. If we go to collision shapes, you can see that this looks like a straight world, but actually it isn't. You could go here, jump up here, jump here, and so on and so forth. So they could prepare for that. Another thing they could prepare for was that, let me do this, not here, but some walls just contain secret passages, so they could incorporate that in their tooling. And also, one thing they could learn about was, let me show you the metadata overlay, was how the respawn points worked. For example, there's a respawn point here. And the way the respawn points worked was that basically when the player died, they got respawned to the nearest one. But that created zones, I would say, which meant that if you die in this location, then you are going to be teleported to this location, which is the nearest respawn point. And that could be used for respawn teleporting.
So that was a color thing that was being shown, right? There were different colors. Each zone was a different color. If you die in red zone, you would get spawned in that red.
Perfect question. No. This is, you see this game here, and if you compare it to the game which was showed a few weeks ago, this doesn't have too much information. Everything which was included, for example, the zone colors, that was the tooling the players created during that 1 week. And after that 1 week, we got to 4 matches during a weekend, 4 teams in each match, and they were actually streaming desktops, so we have recordings, and the recordings again will be published at some point with commentary and so on. So 4 players went against each other against time to, as quickly as possible, run away from a given map. Let's maybe turn on the collision. And this is where we go to, but I'm going to actually show it on the final map maybe. This is where we go to the colors which you mentioned. And also while developing the maps, I did have also a similar tool with colors to just show me where the respawn zones. The idea was that if you, for example, would die somewhere here in this place, then you'd automatically be teleported to this location, even if this location is absolutely distinct from the location you were in previously. That was important, for example, in a challenge to get to these 2 terminals. In the qualification matches, all 4 qualification matches had this challenge. And the idea was that the players had to fall here, and around here they had to type kill in the console and therefore die, and therefore get teleported to the nearest respawn point. And that respawn point, the zone was basically like something like this, I think. So
it was very, very small. Yeah,
very, very small. Yeah, I when I was testing it, I was basically counting to 6 and then typing kill. So because I knew that at 6 seconds I would be like here. And then they would get here. So then they had 2 challenges. One was just a flag for this challenge. Another was a real challenge to be able to open the portal and continue solving the other game. So that kind of tooling and the colors were pretty important. And after the qualification matches, each match was 90 minutes and only 1 team came out of it. So we got 4 teams. 4 teams were invited to the final event, rather the finals of the final event, which was, again, this map. It was pretty similar. There were some, like, for example, this part was copy-pasted from the test map they got. So was this part here. Then in the qualification matches, you could see a tower, and the tower was gone. One note about the tower. As you can see, the tower has a staircase here, so the players just have to jump these platforms. If you cannot see these platforms, it's because they are invisible. And we had actually a couple of teams stuck in this tower for like 15 minutes trying to figure out what to do. And well, the thing was modify the game or modify your tooling to show you the collisions, because there were actual platforms here which you could jump on, but you had to see them to do that. So that was another like in-game challenge which requires some game hacking. And yeah, at the end of the day, because the players already had the tooling prepared, we wanted to make another challenge which kind of changes the game engine to calculate the collisions of some area of the map a little bit different, meaning that if you already had tooling to find secret passages, it would not work here. So in the final match, for example, the players would get this thing. Let me see if I can actually to this. Maybe I cannot. Okay, I think it's... Okay, here we go.
Wow.
Yes, so while normally the secret passages are implemented in a way that in the foreground you see you see a wall, but it doesn't have any collision, or the wall is actually just displayed in the background, so the foreground doesn't have any collision. This labyrinth here, created by Paul, was actually foreground on foreground. There were no secret passages, but the tiles used for the actual pathway were a little bit different, and the engine checked a property of the tile which allowed us to implement it. But at the end of the day, players had to change the tooling to see this labyrinth. So it was also like a cat and mouse game. Like we were one step like in front of the players, and the players had to catch up with their tooling. So yeah, there were quite a lot of challenges. There were also like challenges which are CTF like a simple web challenge outside of the game. You went to the terminal displayed you a link, and then you just solve the web challenge and input the flag in some flag console which you find. Several various kind of challenges. One other logic challenge which I really like was this here was a dev zone. So if you fall from the labyrinth, you die. And the problem is that you also had to somehow get to this terminal here to get a flag. Well, you think you could jump here, but the distance here is actually too much to jump. So players could see it and could think maybe that's a bug in the map, but it wasn't a bug in the map. You had to get to this terminal in a different way. And the idea was to fall down this hole and then go as much left as possible to basically avoid the dev zone, out of bounds of the map, and then go inside and land somewhere here and like just jump down here.
That is both pure genius and evil.
This all credits go to Eduardo, if I remember correctly.
Wow, that is both purely genius and evil. I think this was demoed last week, but logically it makes sense to go out of the game to come back in. But it's just, I wonder how many people were stuck on this just to figure.
I think actually every team solved it at the end of the day.
Wow, okay.
It took more time for some teams than the others, but some teams just got it like right off the bat. So that was pretty amazing. Like the really top contenders, I would say.
Were there any unsolved challenges?
No. At the end of the day, each match had all the challenges solved.
Wow. Were there any Easter eggs, things that were hidden that people were supposed to find out or find?
I think just one in one of these matches, but it was basically, let me do this. Was it this one? Maybe it was this one. No, I don't think I can find it now, but there was basically a hi message somewhere here. That's about it. We didn't do too much Easter eggs, actually. Not in this one.
Is this going to be open source later on for people to try?
Yes, absolutely. It will be open source. Anyone will be able to download a configuration for a Docker container, basically, to run all of the 6 matches, including the test map and before qualification and the final map. And we'll also release commentated videos for each match.
Yeah, and I think there is, I think Live Overflow has a video on this. Someone in the chat, Just John, and just wrote Live Overflow rundown of their participation tooling in the CTF. I think once this is open source, I'm going to try and install it, follow the instructions more than likely. I'm going to play it, but when I get stuck, I'm going to try and see if I can solve it by following some of these other videos. It seems really, really fun. I was mind blown by seeing this. This looks like an incredible fun challenge. Kudos to you guys for putting this together.
Thank you. Yeah, Live Overflow has all the tooling that their team made, plus an actual match commentated by him, which was really fun to watch. Since like during the actual game, I was so focused on like technicalities that I didn't really get to enjoy the match. It was really fun to see it again, especially from a team's perspective.
Wow, that's very awesome, man. This is I'm glad that I got exposed to this, and then we got the chance to have you on here to kind of demo this for us. This is very, very cool. I usually end my streams with 2 questions. it's people that are watching this. We all have stress in our lives. We're all humans. We all have our own issues, our own baggage, whatever you want to call it. The biggest one is imposter syndrome. Um, do you deal with it, and if so, how do you overcome imposter syndrome? And for people that are not familiar with imposter syndrome is where as it says, you think you're an imposter. It means you don't know anything because you're comparing yourself to other people, or you're in the company of people that know a lot more than you do. Do you ever deal with it, and if so, how do you overcome it?
Yes, absolutely. I absolutely have imposter syndrome that comes with dealing with, as you say, smart people. And especially since I joined Google, there are like so many top tier security researchers there. It's just astounding. So yeah, so I got an imposter syndrome. Thankfully, it wasn't too severe, so I just can deal with it. But I know that not everyone is so lucky to have like just minor imposter syndrome symptoms. So I'm not sure how to deal with it because at the end of the day, I just somehow managed.
Yeah.
But like one thing to do is to admit it that you have one, and then you can find help, because it is something everyone deals with, and it's like no shame in that. Just like if you have one, go and figure out how to solve the problem.
Yeah, I think the best advice what you said is to come to terms that you are dealing with imposter syndrome, and realize it's a real thing, and almost everybody in the community kind of deals with it. Um, and the next one is just burnouts. Do you deal with burnouts a lot? How do you manage your time with work, research, personal life, like to avoid burnouts, and how does that work for you?
Yeah, it is a good problem. Well, a good problem. It's a bad problem to have, but it is a problem which I sometimes deal with. Thankfully, in my case, the burnouts are usually topic specific, so I can just jump to a different topic. One thing I realized is that I do not have to be stuck on one topic until I finish it. Sometimes it's okay to just ask for help. Maybe a teammate can take it over. Maybe somebody can just help me a little bit move it forward, um, or maybe it's okay to just leave it, like put it in the drawer. I have quite a lot of projects in the drawer.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then like switch to something else, or maybe take a break, maybe take 2 weeks vacation, go to the mountains and hike for a bit to get your head out of it. But I fully agree, it is an annoying problem to deal with.
Do you have a routine or any way that you manage your time, or is it just like, do you have hey, I work from this hour to this hour only on these days? I'm gonna take this many hours to myself or this many days to myself. Is there a routine like that that helps you avoid burnouts?
No, no, I do it a little bit on the other, like differently. I
Okay.
try to make sure that I sleep 8 hours a day.
Yep.
It's not always possible if there's like crunch time or something, but apart from that, I always try to sleep 8 hours a day. That's really useful. And also, I try to do some kind of exercises every day. It's
Yeah.
usually, in my case, it's just like going on a walk. I live in a pretty hilly area, so that usually involves some, well, it's basically a short hike at the end of the day, but that helps also.
I'm gonna stress this out like even more. The exercise thing, man. It may sound like it's not a big deal, even for 30 minutes to an hour. It changes your in here, dude. It changes everything in your head. It's just a different mentality. I feel like I was one of the people that didn't regularly exercise. I just recently I've made it a thing to 30 minutes. I can give myself 30 minutes to do this, and to make sure I don't get distracted from my exercise and my brain isn't just going to work or other stuff, I count while I walk. So my brain
Okay.
isn't going anywhere, and I just focus on the exercising part. It sounds crazy to some people that I brought it up, but it just helps now because I'm always thinking about work or something that's on my mind, right? Or just it happens naturally. So I count when I get my mind to wander off, and I go nope, counting again. I start over again, and it helps. So if you are someone who's feeling stressed, you're burnt out, you're tired, you need some time to yourself, exercise, go on a walk for 30 minutes. I'm so happy that you brought this up. It's one of the biggest pieces of advice I could anybody that just needs some time to themselves.
Yeah, +1. Another method to not think too much about work is to read a book or listen to a book on a walk. I really like audiobooks, actually. So
Do you meditate?
that's another method. No.
No. I've had a few folks that say they meditate. I try to meditate. It doesn't really do much. I still force myself here and there when I'm really stressed. But I want to hear some folks are like, oh no, meditation is the key for me, and some others are just like, no. I'm in the middle, like I'll try it, but the walking exercising is a lot more helpful than the meditation, I feel like.
Yeah, like everyone is different, right? For each their own.
Well, before I let you go, man, I want to see if you have any last minute things you want to share with us, any advice, anything you want to share before we wrap this up.
Good question. Okay, I don't know. Actually, I'm going to just repeat one thing I already said. Is like, if you're new to hacking, focus on hands-on skills, not about reading about stuff, but about doing stuff, and that's it.
Yeah, that's great advice. It's not going to go anywhere if you tell yourself you're going to start tomorrow. Just start getting to it and just get started. Hey, man, it's been very, very awesome to meet you. Hopefully we get to meet each other at a conference or something where I can actually have a face-to-face conversation with you. But given the circumstances with what's happening in the world today, I'm very, very happy that I had you as a guest on this show. And thank you so much for giving me some of your time on your day off and sharing all your knowledge and your experience with us.
Thank you for the invitation. It was really fun.
Thank you, man. I appreciate the chat. Once again, this is Gynvael. I hope I didn't butcher your name again. I'm so sorry.
That's perfect.
I'm happy that I got it right on the last second. I'm going to put his information in the chat. Please give him a follow. Make sure you check out his YouTube channel. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it, and I look forward to seeing you in person at some point.
Thank you. Cheers, and see you on some conference.
Ciao, man. See ya. I love I get nervous going out of my comfort zone when I bring people onto the stream. Gynvael was somebody that I was kind of nervous to bring on. I don't know why, but it got me nervous because of his experience, and he's been he's done some really cool work that I really want to get to know, and seeing this, having him on here was very, very cool. I highly recommend getting involved and watching his videos and following him on Twitter. That's it. Next week, I have something. It's a surprise. I'm bringing somebody else onto the stream as a surprise, somebody who's been on the stream already. But we're going to do something completely different. I've never done this. It's going to be completely different. If you want to come see it, I'll be online next Sunday, same time. I'll be here with a very special guest. This guy is a legend. He's very cool. He's a good friend of mine. We're going to change things up is all I'm going to say. Other than that, I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the new subs, everybody that just followed. Thank you all the new viewers. I see a lot of you today. But other than that, I'm done. Thank you so much. I will see you all tomorrow for hopefully some Try Hack Me. Until then, I'm out. Peace. And it's not Zayat.